The March 1992 Later with Bob Costas interview was the first long-form chat that the Detroit rocker had had with anybody. And as he told Bob, it was because he liked the show. And they talked a lot about songwriting and influence and their fathers. Bob really went in depth about his compulsive gambling father. And Bob was pretty bare bones about his. Another good Costas chat. Almost all of them are.
Staying up later, our second night with Bob Seger, and we talked about many of his songs and the things you know him best for last night. But here's a song that people don't know because it was never released. You wrote it in the late 70s or early 80s, and it's called Can't Hit the Corners No More.
Yeah.
And the lyrics include...
Can't Hit the Corners, actually, yeah. It was the name of the title, but yeah.
Okay. They used to call you reckless, they used to call you fast, they used to call you dangerous, but that's all in the past. Now they call you clever, the quintessential pro, and sometimes now they whisper when you turn your back to go. A grown man in a children's game, a game you once played free, you've gotten old before your time, and you're worried now they'll see. This ain't competition, man, this is war, and you can't hit the corners no more.
Right.
Now, I know you're a baseball fan, and
Yes.
an obvious baseball reference to a fading pitcher. But
Yeah.
did you see yourself that way, as a fading rock and roll guy?
No, it was, you know, it's a thing. Al Kaline was like my favorite baseball player ever,
Yeah.
and I thought what was great about Al was that he retired long before he had to. You know, he just had this pride and stuff. But you do see guys hanging on and hanging on, you know, and I understand why. And at that time, of course, no, I didn't feel that way. But I thought it was interesting subject matter. I think I was thinking about Catfish Hunter. In a way, I was thinking about Mark Fidrich and his brief thing in the Sun, you know, which was a marvelous thing in Detroit.
So it was really a baseball reference as opposed to just using baseball as a metaphor for yourself.
Yeah, it was a baseball reference, but it was also anything, well, it could be any sport, really, or anything that's physical, or heck, maybe even, I don't know, anything that requires youth, you know, in order to accomplish it.
This is a question that's been asked many times before. Does rock and roll require youth? Because now the legendary rock and roll guys, those who haven't truly burnt out, now they're in their mid-40s like you are. Some are in their 50s.
Right. Well, you know, I saw Stevie Winwood on the Letterman special the other night, and he sings exactly the way he did when he was 16, you know? And I don't sing that as high as I used to. I can feel that. I've got to be a little more canny when I'm in the studio, I have to admit. And I wish I had a voice like Stevie Winwood's. You do notice certain things. I mean, it's part of the passage of time. I'm 46 years old, and sure, when I'm up on stage, I get sore now when I come off and stuff, you know? And so to a degree, I can't do what I did in my 20s and stuff like that, and give quite the same amount of energy. But I think it's possible for me to continue on. I saw Little Richard about 5 years ago in a club, and he was singing just great, you know. And I think if you're blessed with the voice, I think you can go on. You know, I don't think there's any reason not to.
Fire Inside gets a Grammy nomination. You're still selling lots of records. But do you worry, as a lot of creative people do, that one day you'll wake up and that's it? You'll have writer's block, the fastball will be gone, just like that?
You know, certain things in my life could change that. I've never had kids, for one thing. I don't know if you do or not.
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah, and maybe maybe part of the reason rock and roll is appealing is because you do have a very free kind of existence. You're traveling all the time. Even when I'm not touring, I like to travel a lot. I seem to find myself all over the country. It's stimulating. I think if I had kids, that might change. You know, I don't know if my music would change, or maybe my desire to make music would change. I think I'll always write songs. I may get out of the making the albums and the performing and stuff like that and just be a songwriter and let somebody else do it, you know, my stuff. I think that would depend on what happens when I finally do have a family, and I would like to have a family.
Would you feel comfortable, you think, writing stuff for other people? Because it seems like your material is matched to your persona, your voice, your stage presence. Well matched. That's part of the reason why people like you.
Thank you. And I think in a perfect world, I would like to continue to make records, you know, and be able to stay at home. I don't know if that can be accomplished. You know, you've got to go out, you got to make videos. They really want you to tour. They want you to do things like this, and you know, and travel around and go on shows and things. And I think if I had a child, I think I'd want to be there for those formative years. You know, I'd want to do my share, and yeah.
You've never really done anything quite like this before, though, right? They told me as you walked in the studio you'd never done a long-form television interview.
No, I never have. And I like your show, and that's why I did it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
You think there's some element of mystery, therefore, about you? Because you strike me as very accessible, so you don't strike me as the kind of guy who would be attempting to cultivate this mystery about himself.
No, I've never been mysterious. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm just more comfortable with interviews now after all these years. You know, I think I'm a driven person. I have to admit it. I mean, when I'm writing, sometimes I was in my home studio last night really late, and I knew I had to come here and everything. I had to take a nap this afternoon. My girlfriend will tell you I'm really driven. But it's just, I love what I do. I think I loved it the 12 years that I did it before I even was big selling records.
You've had an influence on some of your contemporaries or some younger performers, the way that the Otis Reddings and the James Browns and people like that had an influence on you?
Yeah, I think I hear it in people like Bryan Adams, and I think John Mellencamp started out opening up for me, you know, in a lot of areas, and I heard some of it in him too, but I think that they have both moved on, you know, from that. But I do hear, I remember the song The Rose that Bette Midler won a whole bunch of awards for? Amanda, who wrote that song, was talking in an article one day that Bette called her up and said, I want a Bob Seger ballad, and she wrote The Rose. Okay? So when I see stuff like that, it makes me feel really good, and I definitely hear it. I hear it in other people.
This is something that Dave Marsh, the noted rock writer, said about you. He said, even though Seger's songs tend to have characters to some extent, there's less distance between him and his most extreme characters than you'd think. Springsteen and Mellencamp quite frequently sing of people they don't know, and Dave didn't mean that as a put-down. I mean, Dave is Springsteen's biographer. But Seger has a knack for keeping things personal, even if he's not singing in the first person.
Yeah. I really like to write other people's stories. I remember in '78 when I wrote the famous Final Scene, everybody called me up and said, are you breaking up, you know? And I said, no. You know, I was writing about a friend of mine who was breaking up, you know, and he was a good friend, and I said, well, there's subject matter, and, you know, kind of describing his thing. And I think it's fun to, I guess it's sort of like acting in a way, to kind of crawl into the shoes of someone else and try to imagine it, you know. Maybe I hope it sounds it rings true, you know.
Well, your best stuff though, it does sound like a personal diary, and that's not unique to you. I mean, Paul Simon is a very different kind of performer than you are, and his stuff is a personal diary in one way or another.
Oh yeah, I think Paul and I really are very similar in a lot of ways, except he's just very poetic and has a maybe much greater mastery of the language than I do. But we think very similarly, I think, as songwriters. I really love Paul's stuff.
Do you feel ambivalent at all about your old stuff? Like, the reason why that's brought to mind is I was thinking of Simon sitting in that chair. As beloved as some of the Simon and Garfunkel songs are, there's only about a half dozen of them that he feels 100% comfortable with, I think, when he hears them 20 years later. How about you?
I think I hear the youth, and again, I hear the the know-it-allness, you know, of in my early stuff. Like I'm saying stuff that is totally wrong that I thought was right, you know. Back then. I've got some cockeyed perspectives, but I think overall I'm pretty comfortable with it.
I made a list here. Sure, it's rock and roll, but your stuff, at least the stuff that really resonates with people, it's always about something or other. Like a rock and rock and roll never forgets. About aging and holding on to some kind of values and some sort of consistency.
Holding on to passion, I think that's important.
Yeah, which you've managed to do, I guess, into your mid-40s. Old-time rock and roll sort of takes a poke at fads. American Storm, I guess, was about John Belushi and drugs, wasn't it?
Right, exactly.
They're always about something. Do you find that that's slipping away, too, in rock and roll? Or whatever we call rock and roll, popular music now?
I think there's people out there that are doing what Don Henley calls reporting. You know, that's the way he calls writing about things that they feel strongly about, the environment, politics, social issues, inner cities, you know, drugs, the ills of society, and trying to say something unique about them. And then there's so much to write about. And for me, I also like writing about relationships. As you grow and mature throughout your life, you realize how much less you know than you thought you knew.
Shame on the Moon, or Famous Final Scene, songs like that. Yeah,
and there's these little quintessential moments, and I like to write little miniatures, you know, about a quintessential moment. You know, I've always loved movies, so that I have maybe a sort of a cinematic imagination, as it were, you know. So Famous Final Scene was about that instant of the breakup when you know, oh boy, it really is over and I gotta go. And if you can define those little moments, I think it's fun, you know, and it's informative, and maybe it's worthwhile.
There's a line in one of your most popular songs, Against the Wind, where you say, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Right.
And yet you almost didn't put it in.
Yeah.
Right? Why?
Yeah. I thought it was bad grammar, but it was exactly what I wanted to say, you know?
Yeah. So did someone have to talk you out of it, or did you come to your senses on your own, or what?
Everybody talked me out of it. Yeah, my manager, my tour manager, my band said, that's a great line, man. I don't care if it's bad grammar.
Yeah. One name we haven't discussed tonight is Van Morrison. And I know he ranks very high with you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is it just the quality of the music, or is it being moved by the integrity of it? I mean, he's still out there plugging away and doing the stuff. And
all the above, you know. I think he has this great poetic built-in thing, and a fantastic voice, which, you know, helps, is a great instrument to deliver it all. And I think what I love about Van, and what I forget to do sometimes, is I can tell when Van is just like drifting into a sort of a zone, maybe like when Vinnie Johnson's shooting jumpers or something.
Right. The old piston, as the Detroit roots come out.
Yeah, and you know, where he just drifts into a place where, you know, the whole world is shut out, and he's just singing, and you can tell that he's in that spot. He's like, it's almost a dreamlike, trance-like state when he's singing sometimes, and that's really what music is all about. It's almost a jazz concept, if you know what I mean. You just kind of go out and you're what's the word? You're just winging it, you know. And I love that about Van, is that he will risk that. He will go on and on and on, and you know, he won't fade the ending before the magic happens, as it were. Yeah.
What's the most interesting reaction that you've ever gotten to one of your songs? Because songs strike people different ways. They may make people feel an emotion that wasn't necessarily what you intended.
Yeah, and I think that's what you try to do. You try to leave them as open-ended as possible, but I don't know. I always feel real good, Bob, when I get some reaction to songs that aren't as well known. There's songs, you know, deep in the album, like on the Like a Rock album, there's this song called Somewhere Tonight, and I've gotten a whole lot of mail on that one people say, what a great song, you know. Boy, I've been there. And this new album, Long Way Home, seems to be getting a lot of mail to me. People are just really touched by it. And anytime, that's why I do this, you know, that's why we all do this, to make that emotional connection. That's worth everything.
Here's a strange one, and I was unsure whether I would tell you this, but I will. Still the same, okay, with the references to someone who cannot, for better or worse, change their essential character.
Right.
And the line about the gambler.
Yeah.
My father was a compulsive gambler. My father was a really funny guy. He died when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
He was funny, he was smart, he had a personality that could fill a room, but he was a compulsive gambler. I mean, he would gamble the rent money.
Right.
You know, on baseball games, football games, whatever. His intellect, you would think, would lead him away from that, but emotionally he could not get away from it. And I had a dream about him the night that I first heard that song. I was driving around, I was about 24 years old in St. Louis, and I heard it on the radio. There was still top 40 radio then, so it was on some top 40 station. And that night I had a dream that I was in a casino in Las Vegas. And I had never set foot in a Las Vegas casino in my life. But I was walking through the casino, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father at the craps table. And went over to talk with him. And things get filled in, as dreams do, where you just know all the basic information you need, even though it hasn't played itself out. And I tried to talk him out of it. And why he had been reincarnated wasn't clear, but he could not change. And there he stood. And the soundtrack of this dream was still the same.
Yeah, that's wild.
And that's the first thing I thought of when you walked in here. We hadn't met before today. But
I think we've all met people like the antagonist in Still the Same, the person that I'm singing about there, where they're just very charismatic, you know, but they have tremendous faults. But part of the appeal is the charisma. You know, you overlook everything because of the charisma. I'm actually writing about several people, I won't say who, that I had met throughout my lifetime that made me feel about that, you know, that made that character up. It was kind of a compilation of people, actually. It wasn't one particular person.
Yeah, that was what my father was like. And obviously you forgive your father almost anything.
Oh, sure.
But his strength of personality would make people even outside the family forgive him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's a gift and a curse in a way, you know? It is.
You had to forgive your own dad.
Yeah. Yeah. He wasn't a bad guy. He just drank a lot. And he left us when I was 10. And we were pretty, you know, poor. And we lived, I remember at one point we were living in one room with bunk beds. And my brother and I were sleeping up top. My mother was sleeping down below. And the only money we had coming in was from my brother working as a pack boy at a supermarket. And my mother cleaning houses. And I was going to junior high, you know, and you know, I still, you know, he died in 1968 in L.A., but I don't really hold any grudges against him. I think if I've got, and I'm certain I've got wounds, I haven't done that. I've been in therapy a couple of times in my life for short periods of time, but I think I've overcome it. I think maybe one thing that I think I'm going to be a very attentive father when I become a father, overly attentive for that reason, if you know what I mean. I'm going to try to make up for that. I don't know if that has any meaning or not, but I know when I have a kid, the one thing I'm going to try to do is not be what my father was.
Enjoyed these 2 nights with Bob Seger. Hope you folks did too. Thank you, Bob.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, we'll see you later.